With the trade deadline looming and the Spurs starting to skid and some problems showing their faces, management will likely be quite active in the trade market, and one name that keeps coming up over and over is Jonas Valanciunas. We got an article to dive into that suggests he gets sent to the Spurs. The big man can shoot, he can rebound, but it's not just him. There's been a lot of talk about Devin Vassell recently and his ability or inability to be a second option for the Spurs, and some very interesting trade rumors going on that front. There is a ton of crazy stuff we got to get into coming up on this episode of Spurs Digest, but before we do, I just want to give you guys a huge thank you for the crazy support you've been showing us. We're getting so close to 4,000 subscribers, and we really appreciate if you help us out. 75% of you watching this video actually haven't hit that button yet. We got all the latest Spurs news, rumors, reports almost every single day. So if that sounds good to you and you don't want to miss a thing, hit the subscribe button down below. It's completely free and it would help us out a ton. Thank you so much, guys. But before we get into that Devin Vassell, Jonas Valanciunas, and other trade talks, I want to talk about something happening now. As of today, the NBA informed the Spurs that their game against the Lakers will go ahead as scheduled on Monday, which is great news. Obviously, there's been a ton of stuff going down in LA, and just want to give my thoughts and prayers to everyone affected by these fires. It's been horrible natural disaster. But just wanted to give you guys the update on the Spurs side of things. I'm sure if you have any family, things like that, wishing everyone well. But keep it on the basketball side. Just wanted to keep you guys updated on that. And just to look forward to this game, I wanted to dive into Victor Wembanyama's last 5 games. Just showing, like, recently he's been a bit slower, but now he's had a few days rest. So the big story for me going into this game, not going to do a full preview. We'll probably have one of those coming up on the channel soon. But I just wanted to highlight one thing for Wemby. You can see the more minutes he's playing, game after game, day after day, the production starts to drop a bit, right? Back to back on the 3rd and 4th, and then the 6th, and then the 8th. But now he's going to have a break until the 13th. So hoping that Wemby can bounce back and get back to that 35 point, 18 rebound, 2 blocks type of game here now. So anyway, just wanted to give you guys an update on that front. Wishing everyone the best that is affected by these horrible fires, of course. But let's move on to the next topic of the video. And I want to talk a little bit about, a certain problem that the Spurs have right now. And look, there have been some articles coming out, and I'll link them down below, all the ones I referenced in this here. But one of the big ones here, this comes from Air Alamo, I believe. The Spurs must solve their lack of a second option problem to contend. Now, let me preface this by saying the Spurs don't need to contend this year. Eventually, yeah, right? But a lot of their guys are still young. We don't know what Vassell is going to be in 2-3 years. We don't know what Stephon Castle is going to be in a couple of years. We don't know whatever draft pick the Spurs make between now and then will be at that time. Anyway, I digress. They basically say the Spurs' biggest flaw has been the lack of a clear second option, and Vassell was supposed to be that player, but of course he's been injured. But he's now only averaging 15.2 points per game, 10 fewer points than Wemby, even though he's the second top scorer on the team. But he has not been shooting threes well as of late at just 29.7% over his last 16. And if we take a deeper look into his stats here, he's still a fantastic corner 3 shooter, but right now, the pull-up game, the ISO scoring is not there the way it was in the past few seasons, right? Now, here's the thing. He still has lots of time to figure this out, right? I'm not saying this is urgent or anything, but I do think it's kind of true that if the Spurs do want to really contend, if they want to do it this year, which I don't think they need to, right? It's not like they're fighting for the number 1 seed right now. Wemby's career is long. You don't want to waste his years. But all indications are he's going to have a long, long time here on the Spurs. So I'm not saying this is urgent, but hey, you want to set that precedent of winning, you might have to do something. And I still think Vassell can get back to it, but there's been a lot of names that have been thrown around, and I don't think we need to replace Vassell with these names like some outlets are seemingly suggesting. I think that's a bit too rash, especially considering he's just 24, coming off injury, pretty bad foot injury, which affects a lot of aspects of your game, right? He's still averaging 15 a game. He's still the second leading scorer on the team. He's still shooting those corner 3s at a great clip. There's just a few other things he needs to fix too. There's been a lot of other names thrown around to the Spurs, though, and I'm not going to dive deep onto these trade rumors here, but we hear guys like Bradley Beal. Please no, you guys don't want it. I don't want it. I'm just saying, though, he's really that kind of bona fide second option. You compare the stats, though. Just saying, it's not that different. Anyway, we'll move on. I know he has other players ahead of him, like Booker and KD, sure. But there's some other names that I wanted to mention, Brandon Ingram being one as well. I'm not super sold on this because I think Brandon Ingram, to me, he just screams like one of those players that as soon as he gets his next, big contract, he's just not going to step up the way some people think he could. And again, if we're talking second option Brandon Ingram, I think he's going to demand way too much money for the production that he would end up giving as a second option. So leave me your thoughts on these guys. But the one guy that I keep hearing, and again, I'm not going to dive too deep into this here right now, but we got to talk a bit about De'Aaron Fox. Actually, I'm going to go back to the other view so you can see those stats on the side. I mean, the Spurs have been surrounding Fox for a while now. They're one of these teams that is one of the closest to the Kings in terms of like, hey, looking to see if he gets moved, this kind of thing, right? And as a future point guard, we don't know how much longer Chris Paul has. I mean, watching him play though, to be honest, it feels like he could play forever. I mean, he's still very effective even as he's getting slower and slower every year. The IQ keeps him engaged. It keeps him a relevant player on the court. But Fox is one of those guys, right? He could play that number 2 option to Victor Wembanyama. On occasional nights, he might even be that number 1 option. I mean, the dude's averaging 27 points a game on 49% shooting as a point guard. The three-point shooting isn't quite where we want it to be, and that has been a problem plaguing the Spurs as well that they will have to fix going forward. He's also just 27, I guess the same age as Ingram. Feels like Fox is younger, doesn't it? But anyway, just that's all to say that this second option problem for the Spurs, it doesn't need to be fixed urgently, right? This does not need to be something that's done this year. And anyone saying that Vassell needs to go or Vassell needs to be benched, look, I say just be patient, right? It takes guys different amounts of time, all the time, to get back fully into game shape, to get back fully to where they were. And I'm fully confident Vassell can get there. But maybe some of you disagree, and I'd love to hear from you down below. But the final thing I want to talk about in this video is more trade talks, and this one's one of my favorite because I really love this player. We want to talk about Jonas Valanciunas. This comes from an article talking about 6 bold moves the Spurs can make if they want to start winning sooner rather than later. And the first one in this article is one that I've kind of talked about on the channel before, but this is one that I really like, considering it's sending Zach Collins and a protected 2025 first from the Charlotte Hornets to the Washington Wizards in exchange for Jonas Valanciunas. Would they accept this trade? My guess is the Wizards would probably ask for more, whether it's another decent young player. I don't know if Keldon Johnson would move a needle for them. Not really sure. And would that even be worth it from the Spurs standpoint? I don't know. But what I will say is that the Spurs have the assets in terms of picks or young players to make a trade like this happen if the Wizards are willing to move JV. And look, JV, nope, not there. Here it is. A lot of pictures here. This is the one I wanted to get to. A recent report from a day ago said Jonas Valanciunas is fed up with losing, said it hurts a lot. He spoke out about the losing streak. He said everything's in God's hands and in the GM's hands as he smiled. And like, he's been one of these guys that has been a prime target at the trade deadline. We've all seen Lakers fans talk about how much they want a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, and who can blame them? The dude is having a great season on an incredible cap hit of just $10 million a season. And we bring this full screen. He's averaging 12 points, 8 rebounds, very efficient shooting, 55 from the field. He can even step back and hit the 3 occasionally. Now, his percentage is definitely not great this year. Can't lie. But he has a decent value over replacement player at 0.5. His defensive box plus minus is not ideal. But that's not really what you need from him, right? Like, you have lots of decent defensive bigs. You have a guy like Bassey who can be an energy guy, who can come in there and really lock down the rim as a backup if you need that on a given night. And if you have Wemby at the starting C, you have a lot of those problems fixed. As a guy like JV, even though he's 32, almost 33 years old, he's on an incredible cap hit of a contract, right? It allows the Spurs like $5 million more in flexibility this coming off season, but it also helps get off the Zach Collins contract that just, unfortunately, isn't living up to what we wanted from him. JV is not as good at stretching the floor, but Zach Collins' three-point shot just hasn't been falling the way we've wanted either. I feel like JV is actually a perfect complement to Victor Wembanyama in terms of play style, right? You go from a freak potential future GOAT to an incredible big man who can score in the post, he can shoot the mid, he can step back and hit the 3. He's a physical guy, sets incredible screens, can rebound the ball with the very best of them on the right nights, and he doesn't even foul very much. He's only averaging 1.8 fouls per game despite playing like well over 20 minutes a night, I think. He's about 20 minutes maybe, I'm not totally sure. But still, like, this dude can fill in a great role. He's not going to protect the rim all the time, but he's a big body, can get boards, can set screens. I think he's a great fit. I keep bringing him up because I want this trade to happen. Again, I don't know what it would actually take for the Wizards to take on Zach Collins' contract to give Jonas Valanciunas, because you have to assume as well that lots of other teams want to bring in a guy like JV, a guy who can really be a very solid backup for you on a very reasonable cap hit. That's the big thing here. So naturally, that's why teams like Lakers are in the mix. That's why there's probably a lot of other playoff teams that'd be willing to move off of some money to bring him in. So the Spurs, look, there's going to be a lot of competition if the Spurs want to bring him in. But again, they're in a better position than almost any team that could want JV, especially contenders now, right? Who want to bring in JV. They don't have the assets the Spurs do to match for a Wizards trade. And hey, we know the Wizards are looking more towards the future than the now. So if the opportunity presents itself, this is something I would love. But I want to hear your thoughts. I don't know if all of you will agree on my take on Jonas Valanciunas, but I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below because, I don't know, there's something about him that's just so tempting. But yeah, leave your thoughts down below because that'll do it for this episode of Spurs Digest. And if you enjoyed, you made it almost 10 minutes into this video and you haven't hit that subscribe button, what are you doing? Guys, we got content all the time, nearly every single day, all the latest news. This is your spot to be. I've been your host, Josh Gosse, and I'll catch you in the next one.